Welcome, everyone, to the PFF Fantasy Podcast. I'm Jon Macri, and I am joined, as always, by the great Nic Bodiford. Nic, it's an earlier record time for us this week as we get the good folks in the United States celebrating Thanksgiving. So a big week in the NFL here, but obviously an even bigger week for fantasy football. So happy Thanksgiving to you. How are you as we head into Week 13?
I'm energized. I can't wait. We're going to eat some pie. I've been... Yeah, my significant other indulges me with the baked goods, and I think I've been eating an entire pumpkin pie to myself once every weekend since my birthday is October 2nd, and I think she baked one the week prior. So I think I'm on like week 8 or 9 eating pies every week straight. I'm going for like 2 tomorrow.
All right, man. Well, shit. I thought you were going to say you've just been eating pie this week, but yeah, a nice little 8-week stretch there. That's I'm
pumpkin
sure
pies, man. There's nothing better on earth. Anyway, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited for Thanksgiving. Even though I'm in Canada, we don't have Thanksgiving in November here, but I still get to watch the 3 football games tomorrow. Probably only watch most of 2 of them, and then yeah, man, we got a Black Friday game as well. So this will be it'll be a fun week. It's a little bit busier as our schedules are condensed, but we made through it. So we're gonna knock this thing out as we usually do, and talk about our favorite starts and sits as we always do. Like I said, we're recording this earlier to try to get it out before the Thursday Thanksgiving games. And because we're going to talk about a few players in those games. And yeah, we'll be doing our usual bit, like I said, going through some of our favorite quarterback, defensive, special team streamers, wide receiver, cornerback matchups, man zone data, all that stuff, as well as a couple players picked out from Nate's Start Sit article. And again, you can get access to all of that on PFF.com with a PFF Plus subscription. And right now, actually, we do have a promo code going on for Black Friday. Use the promo code SCORE35 to get 35% off a PFF Plus subscription. So that'll give you access to all the rankings and tools and articles, all the stuff that we put out onto the site, but you'll also get access to the PFF grades and live snap counts and post-game snap counts and utilization, all that kind of stuff. So really valuable stuff here, and we don't always do a promo in season. So really good time to kind of take advantage of that and use the promo code to get 35% off a PFF Plus subscription. Again, that's SCORE35. All right, Nic, let's rock this thing and start with our QB streamers. As usual, plenty to choose from this week. So tell us who tops your list here in Week 13.
Yeah, Drake May, New England Patriots quarterback, facing the Indianapolis Colts. May, this guy is just a rushing phenom. Among 32 NFL quarterbacks with at least 15 rushing attempts, 3rd in missed tackles forced per attempt, 2nd in yards after contact per attempt, 1st in yards per attempt, 5th in explosive run plays. Overall, in the piece, I broke down kind of the impact of DeForest Buckner for the Indianapolis Colts. He's a great player, and he's boosted the pass rush, but the coverage unit as a whole over the last 5 weeks still profiles as an exploitable unit. And Drake May, over the last 3 weeks, he's jumped from he took over the starting role in week 6. Those first 4 games, he earned a 56.3 PFF passing grade. Over the last 3 weeks, he's up to a 70.6 PFF passing grade. Seeing marked improvements from him. I still think that Caleb, he's showing a lot with Thomas Brown, interim OC, but Drake May, I think that the conversation is still ongoing as to whom will be anointed the QB1 from this draft class, and May is very much in that conversation.
Yeah, this rookie class has been performing nicely here so far this season, and yeah, hopefully they just keep that going. I want every team to have good NFL quarterbacks because they're just for a better product, but also for fantasy purposes as well, right? Like Drake May, like you said, since taking over as QB1 in New England in week 6. He is the QB9 overall in fantasy right now. So top 10 quarterback in fantasy. So maybe flying under the radar still a little bit, but because he's in New England and they're not necessarily playing well, but a nice matchup again for Drake May this week. 6th best matchup according to our strength of schedule tool this week. Okay. Next up on your QB streamer list, Nick, you are once again saying yes to Geno Smith in Seattle.
Yeah, I think he was at people are starting to push him a little ways past the 50% line, but he is a weekly QB1, and particularly in these types of matchups, I really think that we ought to be starting him and expecting greatness. That said, the asterisk here is injury report for Seattle came out about a half an hour ago, and both DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett were on it. Metcalf had a shoulder injury. It's not his knee. So this is something to monitor. I think Noah Fant returned to practice. He might finally be good to go after a multi-week absence. So that would be a positive. But for the time being, still in on Geno Smith, still personally starting him in a bunch of redraft and dynasty leagues. What's really fun about him is that he's profiling as a dual threat quarterback, and he's not maybe the Drake May type of rusher, but among the same qualifying sample as I listed in the Drake May section, Geno is 14th in total rushing attempts, 10th in yards per rushing attempt, and ties for 7th in explosive run play. So he's making his own case there as a usable dual threat on a weekly basis. In terms of passing, among 37 NFL quarterbacks with at least 170 dropbacks, 6th in PFF passing grade, 14th big time throw rate, 5th in completion rate, 14th, tied for 14th in yards per passing attempt. And this New York Jets defense has really struggled since firing Robert Saleh, which feels like it was fairly recent, but that was all the way back in the beginning of week 5. Since then, New York allows the 4th most EPA per pass play, 5th most EPA per run play, ties for the 8th most yards allowed per coverage snap, and tallies the most missed tackles in run defense during that stretch. So they're undisciplined, and they're allowing a lot of points, a lot of yards. So for me, this is kind of a no-brainer. Start Smith as a QB1.
Nice. Yeah. And a revenge game for him as well, against the team that drafted him in New York, right? So yeah, always love that narrative. All right. So we obviously have all 32 teams playing this week. So I didn't put another start in there. Instead, we went with a QB sit for this week. And I pulled this one from Nate's article. So Nate included Tua Tagovailoa as a sit this week, going against the Green Bay Packers on Thursday night. And Nate points out that Tua has definitely been on fire the last 2 weeks. He has 52 fantasy points over the last 2 games, and that is the best mark among all quarterbacks. He's been able to take advantage of, though, really some good matchups, right? The lowest graded secondaries this season in the New England Patriots and the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders have also been by far the worst coverage grade among teams this season, while the Patriots have a team coverage grade under 45 in 2 of their last 3 games that weren't the Dolphins. So they are facing the Green Bay Packers this week, who have allowed the 6th fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. This season, the Packers also have the 6th highest team coverage grade this season. The Packers' run defense grade is 9th worst, while both the Patriots and the Raiders have had higher run defense grades, Nate points out. So Tua will likely be less effective this week, and the Dolphins might be more inclined to run the ball. So Nate also points out he should still have a decent floor despite the concerns, but he's unlikely to be kind of a top 12 fantasy quarterback this week. I believe he has him ranked right now as the QB 18 overall. All right, that is our quarterbacks. Let's get into the wide receivers next. We always have plenty of names to discuss here, especially in a week like this. So we're going to start with your wide receiver cornerback matchup article, Nick. And the first name on the list, we talked about Geno Smith. So his number 1 target, Jackson Smith in Jigba, is up first.
Yeah, and so this was written, prior to the injury report coming out. So I just liked this matchup from the jump, and now Seattle might be missing one or two of their starting 3 wide receiver sets, which would just raise this ceiling as high as can be. We're seeing right now JSN breaking out as I call him in the article, and he's having a wide receiver 1 breakout. He's absolutely crushing it right now. This week, he is due to face New York Jets slot cornerback Michael Carter II, likely on at least 75% of snaps, but I've got the perhaps higher. In the 2 weeks leading up to Seattle's Week 10 bye, Smith-Njigba lined up in the slot at an 83.2% rate, and then the 2 weeks since, that was in Week 10, in the 2 weeks since, lining up in the slot 78.3%. It's going to be comfortably 3/4 snap share here against Michael Carter Jr. One thing to note, actually, I guess before we get into the Carter section, is drawing from your expertise. We talked about this, I think, last week. JSN, he is very good at earning targets against man coverage, and the Jets have been predominantly or frequently running man coverage schemes since Salah was fired in Week 6. So that bodes positively. He's at a 28.3% target rate against man coverage. Not only leads Seattle's starting 3 wide receiver sets by 4.5%, but it ranks 13th among 33 NFL wide receivers with at least 20 targets earned against man coverage. Got to correct that. I have that zone in the article. Can't run away from my mistakes, though. Anyway, looking at the data over the last 4 games, this is so awesome. So among 65 NFL wide receivers with at least 105 receiving snaps in weeks 8 through 12, JSN, highest graded player, 91.8 PFF receiving grade. He is 11th in target rate, 2nd in yards per route run, 8th in catch rate, 12th in contested catch rate. I highlighted here a link to this piece from the summer. He's got an 11-yard average depth of target. And what we saw last year, this is why I was so pumped about JSN this summer, what we saw last year was when he was given opportunities to work at least 10 yards downfield, he really killed it. And with Ben Grubb, I always want to say Ben, that was an old Ravens guard. Ryan Grubb, his hiring at offensive coordinator this offseason with the downfield scheme that he was running at the University of Washington, which is, in my backyard. I thought JSN would have more downfield opportunities, and he's officially averaging targets thrown past 10 yards downfield, he's thriving. And yet, this is really cool, 11th in yards after the catch per reception. He's 3rd in receiving yards after contact, 14th in yards per reception, ties for 5th in missed tackles forced, ties for 8th in explosive pass plays. He's absolutely killing it. And again, we get the man coverage boost, but then looking specifically at this matchup, Michael Carter Jr. ranks 21st in yards allowed per coverage snap, 30th in forced incompletion rate, 33rd in open target rate, 37th in targeted rate. And he's had the benefit of facing the 4th most drops and or off target incompletion. So even with quarterbacks doing him favors, he's still ranking this poorly. And that was among 38 NFL slot defensive backs with at least 120 slot coverage snaps. I don't know what's going on with them because Michael Carter has traditionally been a really good slot cornerback, but this year that's not the case. Sorry to get wordy there, but I'm just so pumped about this. And I think we're going to see a really fun performance this week.
Nice. Yeah, you got me pumped up for it too, man. I love JSN, and I would love to see him go off this week again. And like you said, yeah, Jets playing a lot of man coverage, top 10 rate in the league. They're only around like league average in most team coverage metrics. So it lines up very nicely here for Jackson Smith in Jigba. You've highlighted another one of my favorite wide receivers here as your second name on the list. It is Ladd McConkey of the Los Angeles Chargers going up against Sweet D. Alford of the Atlanta Falcons.
So D. Alford, Sweet D is also hamstrung D. He went into Atlanta's Week 12 bye with a hamstring strain. I don't know what his practice availability was today. Hopefully he was able, for his own sake, hopefully he was able to kind of get right there. But if he is unable to play, his backup is Richie Grant, who's allowed a 100% catch rate in slot coverage this season. So we're fine if D. Alford's not in there. But if D. Alford is, Ladd McConkey should be able to kind of take this guy's lunch money. 25th in PFF coverage grade, 31st in targeted rate, 25th in catch rate allowed, 23rd in yards allowed per coverage snap, and 28th in open target rate. McConkey, 5 weeks ago, finished as the overall PPR wide receiver 2, but he has not scored a touchdown since, finishing as the wide receiver 33, 48, 16, and 20. I think this week he kind of really drives home the point and gets the job done here. I expect him to finish as a wide receiver one, looking at his data among 64 NFL wide receivers with at least 250 receiving snaps, because he does go out to the perimeter a little bit, which I'll touch on again in a second here. 19th in targeted rate, 13th in yards per out run, 17th in yards after the catch per reception, 12th, ties for 12th in missed tackles forced, 3rd in explosive pass plays. And in his time on the perimeter, lines up there at roughly a 30%, actually exactly a 30% rate. Atlanta, their perimeter wide receiver coverage unit, helpfully allows the 4th most EPA per play to opposing wide receivers. He also benefits from facing Atlanta's zone coverage scheme. He's earned 33 targets against zone coverage. That's 3 shy of the team high, which is very funny because I believe it was Will Dissly who's actually the leader. And Will Dissly just showed up on the injury report today with a groin strain. We don't know the severity, but if he's out, McConkey is unquestioned number 1 target earner against zone coverage here. I expect him to still kill it, even if Will Dissly is active. But if he is out, he is head and shoulders above the rest. Averages 1.95 yards per out run on qualifying targets against zone coverage. It's a good matchup. It is one to target.
Yeah, no, especially if Will Dissly isn't able to go this week, like you said, showed up on the injury report. And I mean, McConkey is just like a natural replacement to take over those targets in the middle of the field there. So yeah, would love to see that go for McConkey's favor. But yeah, like you said, even with Dissly in there, McConkey's just been such a strong target earner for Justin Herbert. It's hard to ignore him this week. And then last name on the list. Oh shit! I mean, another one of my. I didn't mean to swear there. Another one of my wide receivers here, Khalil Shakir of the Buffalo Bills, going against the San Francisco 49ers, specifically Diamador Lenore.
Yeah, so I guess remains to be seen if Lenore suits up, because he underwent an MRI on his injured knee on Monday. So if he is active, I still like this matchup. But if he's not, here's what's going on. So starting free safety Jair Brown is the number 2 slot defensive back in this scheme, but they can't just ask him to fully abandon that role. Unfortunately, though, there's not a lot of depth going on behind him, because Charvarius Ward, for deeply sad personal reasons, is not playing at this time. If he is able to play, that does shift things around a little bit, but currently not playing. He has been replaced by backup Renardo Green, who would be Lenore's primary backup if he weren't already filling in on the perimeter. So I know that was confusing, but just I guess the thing to take away here is that the San Francisco 49ers secondary is currently woefully understaffed, and specifically they're going to have a lot of difficulty covering the slot. As for Khalil Shakir, this guy's, I don't know. He does work like right up against the line of scrimmage, so maybe he gets knocked for this reason. But among 37 NFL slot receivers with at least 120 slot receiving snaps, Khalil Shakir ranks 1st in catch rate, 1st in yards after the catch per reception, and 1st in missed tackles forced. He's 5th in yards per out run at 2.39, 11th in target rate. He's a really good little player. And I did put this in here. For those concerned about this being a lopsided game script, because Brock Purdy reportedly threw 1 pass in the practice portion that was open to media today, and it was a screen pass. It doesn't look like he's going to be active. So if you're worried about a run-heavy affair, here's what I got for you. Buffalo's 12th ranked 58.5% pass play rate while winning among NFL teams in weeks 9 through 12. Assuages concerns over a potential run-heavy game script. Buffalo notably ties for 5th in 11 personnel, 3 wide receiver sets, snap counts while winning, which is 74 snaps during that span. This is very notable because Buffalo was on bye in week 12. So even taking a full game off while this team is winning, they're still 1 in 3 receiver sets, 2 throwing the ball at a top 12 rate, and 3, they're averaging 7.1 offensive plays per game, which likewise ranks 5th among NFL teams during that span. I fully expect Khalil Shakir to just stay on the field all day. It doesn't matter what the game script is. He's going to get a lot of opportunities to take advantage of this defense.
Yeah, no, I love this. And the other part of it too, because I wrote up Khalil Shakir in the O-line D-line matchup article this week.
Nice.
The 49ers could potentially be without Nick Bosa again this week.
Right.
He did not practice on Wednesday, right? So he missed last game already with that hip/oblique injury. If he can't go without him last week, the 49ers managed just a 60.9 pass rush grade. That ranks 17th among the 26 teams that played. They're going up against the Bills. Their offensive line has been solid, 73.2 pass blocking grade, have allowed just a 24.8% pressure rate. Those are above average marks for the position. And then you look at Khalil Shakir specifically. On non-pressure dropbacks, he owns a 29.9% target rate, which not only leads his team, but ranks 18th among 165 qualifying wide receivers and tight ends on the year. He has found just natural success in those opportunities. He's averaging 0.6 fantasy points per route run. That ranks 17th among the same qualifiers. He should once again, I think, be in line here for to be Josh Allen's primary target and take advantage of this matchup. So I like this call a lot.
Awesome. Before we jump over to the sits,
Yep.
I'll throw this one in there. Philadelphia Eagles at Baltimore Ravens pass funnel. First team on the pass run funnel report. Among NFL teams in weeks 8 through 12, Baltimore ranks 16th in EPA per play, 19th in explosive pass plays allowed rate, and they have allowed the most explosive pass plays during that span, 36. The game's 50.5 point over-under last I checked was week 13's highest. We do need to check on Devontae Smith's hamstring status, but right now it's a fire the cannons. All Philadelphia Eagles, they're gonna soar.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, actually, I got a handful of names here from the wide receiver man zone article as well. So I'll run through them and some of the key sticking points here, and then you let me know if you agree, disagree, anything you want to add here at the end. But I'll start with Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the reason that I'm even putting Mike Evans on here because he hasn't had a top 10 PPR finish since week 5, which obviously part of that is due to missed time, but draws a really nice matchup here to get back in that range as the team's target leader team's target leader and ranks top 20 in fantasy points per route run against zone coverage this season. The Panthers play zone coverage at a top 10 rate, but they are 25th in yards allowed per reception, and they are 30th in yards allowed per coverage snap. So a nice matchup for Mike Evans to get back on track. I also highlighted Keon Coleman. So this one too, obviously we like Khalil Shakir quite a bit. Keon Coleman really just kind of more of like a deeper flex play because he's still questionable as well. It seems like he has a chance to play this week, but coming out of the team's bye, it gives him a little bit more time to heal up here. But it's decent timing for him. He ranks 20th in fantasy points per route run versus man coverage, and he's earned a much greater target rate at 26% than he is when facing zone, which is only 12%. The 49ers do play man and zone at like league average rates, but their big weakness is in man coverage. They rank in the bottom 10 in explosive play rate allowed, yards per target, and yards allowed per coverage snap while in man coverage. I also highlighted Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks as kind of a combo this week. They have Jaden Reed, obviously, he continues to dominate against zone coverage. He ranks second in fantasy points per route run against zone. Meanwhile, Dontavian Wicks should see an increased role this week. Romeo Doubs is out, so Dontavian Wicks seeing a very high 41.5% target rate versus man coverage. And the Dolphins, the reason that I highlighted one player for zone, one player for man, is that the Dolphins play man and zone coverage at league average rates this season, but they rank 19th in team coverage grade in both zone and man as well. So I like those two options there on Thursday night. I also highlighted Adonai Mitchell as another kind of deeper play here for the Indianapolis Colts because Josh Downs is likely to miss week 13. So AD Mitchell should have a larger role this week. That could work in his favor. He's been targeted at an incredibly high rate against man coverage as well. And he's found some success ranking inside the top 40 in fantasy points per route run against man coverage. Patriots play man coverage at the second highest rate this season. And they do rank among the 10 best defenses in man coverage, but Adonai Mitchell specifically getting a lot more looks when he gets single coverage. And then the last name on the list here, DeAndre Hopkins has found actually most of his success against both man. The both the most success against both man and zone coverage on the Kansas City Chiefs. He ranks inside the top 40 in fantasy points per route run against both coverages. We highlighted him last week for being in line for kind of like his second strong fantasy game as a Kansas City Chief, and he was able to do that. He should be able to continue that streak here in a favorable matchup going against the Las Vegas Raiders, who play man and zone coverages at league average rates, but they rank 32nd in team coverage grade with a 41.5 while in zone, and they rank 26th while in man with a 50.5. So that's my kind of handful of bonus names there from the wide receiver man zone report.
I dig it. Rolling along to the wide receiver sits section here. First one up, Cleveland Browns ex wide receiver. This is so how the mighty have fallen. Cedric Tillman facing potentially shadow coverage from Denver Broncos number one cornerback Pat Surtain. It's possible that Sean Payton goes for a revenge game against Jerry Jeudy and sticks Pat Surtain on him. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to stick with just looking at the assignments that Pat Surtain has had this season in shadow coverage. Cedric Tillman way more so fits the mold of just the classical big bodied X guy running routes on the perimeter. So it's what it's what I think will happen. But Tillman, man, I mean, he had a couple spots of brilliance here, but he has really crashed back down to earth. Among 64 NFL wide receivers with at least 250 receiving snaps, Tillman ranks outside the top 45 in target rate and yards per out run, and he grades out outside the top 45 in PFF passing grade. Meanwhile, he's going to be catching passes or earning targets. We'll see about the catching passes part from Jameis Winston, who is averaging the league's 10th highest turnover-worthy play rate. We do like Jameis Winston for fantasy purposes, but I think that against this Denver Broncos defense, this could really kind of go off the rails here with interceptions and sacks. I just don't know how many like catchable passes Cedric Tillman is really going to be earning in this one between Pat Surtain, who, highest graded cornerback among 65 NFL perimeter cornerbacks with at least 190 perimeter coverage snaps, number 3 in target rate, number 2 in yards allowed per out run. You get it. I just don't know how many catchable targets Cedric Tillman is going to be earning between Pat Surtain and Jameis Winston's errant arm. So this week, I think I've got him listed him here as a highly volatile wide receiver 4/5, probably pushing closer to that 5. What do you think? Are you in on Tillman this week?
Yeah, I mean, not overly excited about him. No, the only thing that I had like as far as notes for Tillman go was that he actually has been better against man coverage. He hasn't been like amazing or anything. The Broncos do run man coverage at a pretty high rate, but they're outside of Patrick Surtain. They're not very good at it. So if he is going to be seeing Patrick Surtain, obviously that makes all the difference in the world, right? So yeah, I'm fine with this call for sure. And then you've also highlighted from the Thursday night game or Thursday day games, I guess it's the middle of the day, whatever time that is across the country. Wan'Dale Robinson of the New York Giants going up against the Dallas Cowboys, Jordan Lewis.
Yeah. So Wan'Dale, he's got a couple things working against him here. Number one, flowers to Jordan Lewis. This guy's playing really well. He's breaking up passes very efficiently, and he is really dissuading quarterbacks from targeting him in coverage. Among 38 NFL slot defensive backs with at least 120 slot coverage snaps, Jordan Lewis, 2nd in PFF coverage grade, 4th in target rate, 12th in forced incompletion rate, 16th in yards allowed per coverage snap, and 13 in explosive pass plays allowed rate. I think the targeted rate thing specifically, at 1, he's convincing QBs to look a different direction. And 2, he's playing as a top 12 player, 9.7% forced incompletion rate. He's doing a very good job of breaking up the passes when quarterbacks are targeting him. And that's basically Wan'Dale's whole thing, is earning targets at a high volume. He is a capable target earner, but so he ranks 17th in target rate among 37 NFL slot receivers with at least 120 slot receiving snaps, 7th in catch rate, but 29th in yards per out run at 1.11 and 36th in average depth of target and yards per reception, under 5 yards downfield at average depth of target. on that point specifically, we now know that Drew Lock appears likely to start this week with Tommy DeVito experiencing both forearm and general body soreness. I think is how it was reported. Which is just
same.
Got his stuff rocked. Yeah, same, right? Yeah. But here's the thing with Drew Lock, he's kind of a Jameis Winston. He's a little bit fun for like downfield receivers, but his average depth of target in 4 of 5 NFL seasons is 8.5 yards or deeper downfield. And he's also averaging at least a 4.3% turnover-worthy play rate. He tried like 9 passes earlier this year, which resulted in, I think it was an 18% turnover-worthy play rate. 9 passes, yeah, it's a small sample. But the point is, like, in the limited action we've seen from Drew Lock, he's still just devil may care. So this just does not look like a good situation for old high volume Wandale to get the job done as a flex play in week 13.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Yeah, the offense it's a mess right now. Obviously, Drew Lock probably going to be starting in there. Plus, we could get a squeaky wheel game from Malik Neighbors as well, asking for some more targets as well. So if there are going to be, quality targets in this offense, I could imagine that they're mostly going to be going over to Malik Neighbors. So one more wide receiver cornerback matchup to avoid this week. Nic, damn it. You've got Ray. It's late, so I'm messing up my words here. Ray McLeod of the Atlanta Falcons going against the Los Angeles Chargers. Jasir Taylor.
Yeah. So, jeez, this is so aggravating. So Darnell Mooney entered week 11 with an Achilles injury. He was then forced from play with a hamstring injury, and now in there we go. They actually did do it in the semi-proper manner. Atlanta released their friggin' report in a paragraph of text, but instead of being on the injury report with a hamstring injury, they have him back to being listed, Darnell Mooney, this is, with an Achilles injury. So with Mooney, like, we don't want to mess with Achilles. I don't know why they're starting this guy with an Achilles injury, but anyway, they are, or they did, what have you. Darnell Mooney's injury makes Ray McLeod, wide receiver 4 or 5, viable, maybe a PPR flex play. I really don't think anybody should be considering that seriously, though. They're facing the Los Angeles Chargers, who, one, defend the slot with Jasir Taylor, who has proven to be very good, and two, the guy who backs him up specifically in this slot coverage role is Derwin James. But on Jasir Taylor, 13th in PFF coverage grade, 2nd in targeted rate, ties for 11th in catch rate allowed, 2nd in forced in completion rate, 8th in yards allowed per coverage snap, and 14th, in explosive pass plays allowed rate. I just think that they're like Ray McLeod. He's sort of a lesser Wandale. Like, he's going to rely on volume, and I just don't see any way that he's going to succeed in that regard working against Jasir Taylor and Derwin James.
Gotcha. No, I'm with you. I think that makes perfect sense. I would not be messing with that either. So I've also highlighted 4 kind of players that maybe not necessarily like sits, but players that I'm kind of tempering expectations for this week. Again, kind of coming from the wide receiver man zone report. And the first one is Marvin Harrison Jr., who stood out here for the Arizona Cardinals, because the Cardinals wide receivers, they have not been overly effective against zone coverage this season. The Vikings play zone coverage at the 2nd highest rate in the NFL, and they rank top 10 in defensive success rate and completion rate allowed when in zone. And even though, like, Marvin Harrison Jr., he leads the way in terms of target rate and fantasy points per route run against zone, he does rank outside the top 50 wide receivers in that regard, in fantasy points per route run. And then that 18% target rate is well below his 30% target rate, which he is seeing against man coverage, and just not expected to see a lot of man coverage this week. So again, not like a full-on avoid, but just somebody that I'm tempering expectations for. And same thing with Xavier Legette of the Carolina Panthers, because this is another group here where they have found very little success against zone coverage, which includes really subpar target rates across the board. But Xavier Legette specifically ranks 96th in fantasy points per route run against zone. The Buccaneers, who they're playing, have run zone coverage at a top 10 rate. They rank slightly above league average in a lot of the zone coverage metrics, including 12th in yards allowed per coverage snap and 11th in explosive play rate allowed. So that's Xavier Legette. And then a couple guys here versus man coverage. DJ Moore has struggled against man coverage this season. He ranks 104th among 131 qualifying wide receivers in fantasy points per route run. And he just has a 13.5% target rate against man coverage. He's facing the Detroit Lions, who play man coverage at the highest rate in the NFL. They rank in the top 5 in first down plus touchdown rate allowed and defensive success rate while in man. So really kind of a brutal matchup for DJ Moore. I would love to see him kind of, get back on track here. He played well last week, but it just stands out as a matchup to temper expectations there. And the same thing with Jacoby Myers, actually. Jacoby Myers, another guy that had a big game last week of the Las Vegas Raiders. He leads the team in fantasy points per route run versus man coverage, but he ranks outside the top 50 overall in that regard. And then even with a 28% target rate, that is. So the only thing with that target rate is that there is a change at quarterback this week that makes that target rate maybe a little less reliable. And then going against the Kansas City Chiefs, who do play man coverage at a top 10 rate this season, they rank above average in team coverage metrics, including 10th in yards allowed per coverage target, 14th in first down plus touchdown rate allowed when in man coverage. So love Jacoby Myers, love what he did last week. Probably not going to have that big of a game again here against Kansas City. All right, we will go on to our other positions here, but first, a shout out from Fabric by Gerber Life. As parents, we do everything we can to set our kids up for a successful future, academics, team sports, college admissions. But what about getting started financially when they're out on their own? Fabric makes it easy for you to set up an investment account for your child now that grows with them and helps prepare for their financial future. Funds can be used for nearly anything benefiting your child, from tuition and books to summer camps and after-school activities. And when they're adults, they can use their funds for their first home, new car, or even to start a business. It's all online, and setting up an account can take you just 5 minutes. So get started investing with as little as $1 a day, then manage your child's account and monitor their investments right from your phone. There are no contribution limits, multiple tax advantages, and they're SIPC insured up to $500,000. Plus, no commission fees and just a low flat monthly maintenance fee. You can share your child's unique gifting link with family and friends. So instead of them gifting things they'll outgrow for birthdays and special occasions, they can help grow your child's investments instead. Fabric has partnered with Gerber Life, trusted by millions of families like yours for over 50 years. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/fantasy. That's meetfabric.com/fantasy, meetfabric.com/fantasy. This is a paid for promotion for the Fabric UGMA product and not for investment advisory services. Portfolio managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors, Inc. Custodial services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Terms apply. Learn more at meetfabric.com. Okay, let's go on to the running backs next. And I want to start with the first name on the list. I believe this one. Yeah, this one was from Nate's Start Sit article as well, which will be out on Thursday. It is Bucky Irving of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we literally just saw how effective Bucky can be as a fantasy asset. He finished as the PPR RB3 last week. He was RB7 in the previous game before that. I know that there are 3 running backs to contend with here, but Irving has been by far the best of the bunch. So if you look at the 52 running backs who have at least 50 carries this season, Bucky Irving ranks fifth in yards per carry, second in missed tackles forced per attempt, second in yards after contact per attempt, 10th in first down plus touchdown rate, 12th in PFF rushing grade, and 15th in explosive run rate. He's also now leading the team in goal to go carries with 12. Rachaad White has 9. Rachaad White leads the team's running backs in receiving snaps on the year. But last week, Irving ran 19 routes while White ran just 11. Irving got 6 targets, just 1 for Rachaad White. So they've talked about like a hot hand approach to this backfield, and there is arguably no hotter hand than Bucky Irving. Carolina, who they are facing this week, is allowing the most fantasy points per game to running backs. The Bucs own the best strength of schedule matchup for running backs this week against the Carolina Panthers. Nate has him as the PPR RB19. What do you think about Bucky this week? Because I know you wrote up this matchup in the Run Funnel report as well this week.
Yep. So awesome breakdown there of the recent usage. One thing that I wanted to highlight, Bucky last week catching 6 of 6 targets, averaged 3.37 yards per out run, which is just exceptional for like even a wide receiver one. That's outstanding. As for the matchup though, so I have this unit. This is a run funnel. It doesn't mean I don't like the Mike Evans call you made earlier. I think he can totally just kind of dust these guys. I just think that the backfield with the game script, like second half, Bucky Irving's just going to trample them. Carolina Panthers in weeks 8 through 12 are allowing the most EPA per play, while ranking 19th in explosive run plays rate allowed and tying for 25th, only 25th in tackles for loss or no gain, and ranking 30th in yards allowed before contact per rushing attempt. It's 50.6 PFF run defense grade, ranks third worst during that span. I think they're just going to pound the rock in the second half. Bucky Irving, RB19. I don't know. I'll have to take a look at this. I'm blanking on which teams are on bye this week, but none. Okay. Okay. 19. I might push him. I feel like I might get him up to like 15 or 16. Anyway, so I emphatically agree. I think this is awesome. Sean Tucker and Rachaad White, like maybe you can start them if you're in a really dire situation, because Sean Tucker did get some of the goal to go stuff last week. I've said this a million times before. I know no one's going to enjoy this. In Dynasty, I still think Rachaad White is a buy. Sure. He's a 6 foot, 220-pound pass catcher. That guy's going to be in the NFL for 10 years. Is he going to get bounced out of jobs because there are better players? Yes. But he's going to go do the same thing. When this contract expires, he's going to go catch 70 passes somewhere. Right. So anyway, I don't pay high for him. Buy low.
Yeah.
Bucky Irving this week, he's going to kill it.
Yeah, would love to see it. And then I also wanted to highlight another running back just related to your Run Funnel report as well. So I went with Tony Pollard of the Tennessee Titans, another running back really that finished as a top 5 PPR running back for the first time this season last week. So it's been kind of an up and down season for Pollard as a fantasy asset, but even with like a handful of games where he's finished outside the top 20 at the position, he's still the PPR RB20 on the year. And what helped him last week was that Tajay Spears was out with a concussion. So he'll probably be back this week, which isn't as ideal for Pollard considering he played like a season high 94% of snaps last week. So that snap rate is going to come down probably to like 75-ish to 80%. But even still, while not necessarily like expecting a top 5 finish from him, I think there's plenty of reason to kind of still keep Pollard locked into fantasy lineups this week. It's not just the strong usage, but a good matchup as well, Nick. I know you're going to get into the matchup here because you've highlighted this group as a one to target, but our strength of schedule tool has them as the 5th best matchup for running backs as well. The Commanders are they're 6-point favorites, but Will Levis has sneakily been playing better recently. We've talked about that on the waiver wire show. So he'll have a chance to kind of keep them in this game. And if it's close, Pollard should get plenty of opportunities to run the ball. He's run the ball more when they're winning naturally. His 3 games with his highest rushing attempts were all wins, but not even saying that they're going to beat Washington this week, but I don't hate their chances of just being competitive. So what do you think about this matchup?
Yeah. One thing I wanted to highlight here, you mentioned Will Levis. This guy has begun running the ball since he returned from his week 6 shoulder injury in week 10. He's totaled 20 rushing attempts over the last 3 weeks. That's ties for second most among NFL quarterbacks. He's one of just 11 NFL quarterbacks who have run the ball at least 10 times during that span. His 45.0% first down and or touchdown conversion rate ties for 4th, and his 70.1 PFF rushing grade ranks 8th. I think Will Levis, he's a high-end QB2 this week, and if he punches one in from 7 yards out, I'm not going to be surprised that I liked it's maybe a little bit volatile, but I do kind of like to take note when quarterbacks have high first down conversion rates, because it tend, like Drake May does this, kind of tends to show you that it may not be good for the offense overall, but they'll tuck and run if they see the first down marker close. Anyway, it just keep the chains moving, which I guess is good. That's good for success rate. Right. But on the matchup part, did you want to add something there?
No, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. On the matchup, on the Washington side of things, over the last 5 weeks, Washington ranks bottom 5 in both EPA allowed per run play and in yards allowed before contact per rushing attempt. During that span, they have missed 35 tackles in run defense. They are the only team to miss more than 30, or excuse me, more than 29. They're the only team to break into 30, which is, what do you call that? A dubious distinction. As for Tony Pollard here, one thing that I want to highlight, tell you 2 running backs, and you guys can figure this out on the way. Running back 1, 185 rushing attempts, 0.14 missed tackles per rushing attempt, 4.3 yards per carry, 2.9 yards after contact per carry. Caught 23 passes. That's a 19.5 target rate, 1.38 yards per out run. Basically line of scrimmage, ADOT 0.3, and they've scored 11 touchdowns. That's running back number 1. Running back number 2, 184 rushing attempts, so 1 fewer, 0.15 missed tackles forced per rushing attempt, 10th higher, 4.3 yards per carry. That's the same, 3.5 yards after contact per carry. That's more than a half yard better. They've caught 33 targets instead of 23. 18.4%, so 1.1% under on target rate, 0.76 yards per out run. That's a pretty big gulf, but pretty similar ADOT there, 0.12. They've scored 4 touchdowns, though. Those 2 running backs, running back number 1 was Houston Texans running back Joe Mixon, who is currently widely regarded as perhaps the best mid-round running back pick. The other is Tony Pollard. They're very nearly the exact same player. Remember, 185 rushes to 184, 4.3 yards per carry for both of them. And Pollard is playing better in the sticky metrics, the missed tackles forced and the yards after contact. He's also caught more passes. If positive touchdown regression begins to hit here for Tony Pollard at the second half of the season, he can push for top 5 finish here. So I'm very excited about Tony Pollard. I think he's going to. I don't think that, like Tyjae Spears, yeah, he's coming back, but I mean, the guy, he's a very good role player. He's got a terrible knee. They have no reason to take a foot off the gas with Tony Pollard.
Yep. No, I'm with you. So let's look at some sits now at the running back position. And the first sit of the week is from Nate's Start Sit article as well. And it's one that we highlighted as a sit last week as well. And it's Ramondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. The only thing is the reason that we highlighted him last week was more for the poor matchup, and sitting him worked out, obviously. But the bigger concern this week coming out of that last game versus Miami was Stevenson's usage. So Stevenson has averaged about 75% of offensive snaps on the year, but last week dipped below 50%, ceding a lot of snaps to Antonio Gibson. Now, the Patriots were trailing a lot during that game, but that typically hasn't affected Stevenson's snaps too much, where this week it definitely did, right? And, if they're trailing again, which isn't impossible, and even if they're not, that low usage is enough in a week where all 32 teams are playing, where we can look at Stevenson as kind of an avoidable fantasy option until we see that usage come back to normal. You look at the Colts too. The Colts are allowing just 1 rushing yard before contact per attempt. That's the 4th best mark in the league. Patriots are generating just 0.8 rushing yards before contact per attempt. That is the 2nd worst mark in the league. And then, you add in the risk of him being around that 50% or lower in snaps again, then I think we just try to avoid that low volume if possible. I know Nate has him outside the top 24 PPR running backs this week as well. How do you feel about this one with Stevenson?
Yeah, I desperately started Ramondre in one league last week, and as the game was unfolding, I was just like, I should have listened to John. My backup would have been Marvin Mims, which that would have been the right call, but still bagged the W, sure. So that's okay. But yeah, so to your point though here, this matchup, Indianapolis, they're such a weird defense. They've got this these speedy linebackers that should be able to have a larger impact on their run defense than they seem to. Grover Stewart is very good interior defender. I love DeForest Buckner. It's just weird. I don't really get it. At any moment, those two guys, DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart, can just take over the run defense, but they have not quite dominated opponents as much as I would have expected them to. But you nailed it with the usage there. Yeah, I think it's fair to sit him. I think a lot of people probably have him as like a high-end RB2, though, based on the way they've built their teams. Would you start him as Devon Vele? Are you starting Marvin? Are you starting Devon Vele over Ramondre this week?
I might start Devon Vele. Sure. Yeah.
I think I am too.
Yeah, I'll give him a shot. Why not? He's looked good. He's been getting some targets, and
it.
yeah, man, I'm happy to do that. And yeah, just like you want to, like, again, just want to try to avoid the kind of the risk there of like the low usage and then potentially just a poor matchup here for him. So yeah, I would. This is one that I would be looking to avoid for sure. And then the other name that I put here for the running back sit, I put this one in the offensive line, defensive line matchup article, Nick Chubb. So Nick Chubb, he's coming off his best game of the season thanks to finding the end zone twice in a snowy Thursday night football game. He ran the ball 20 times in that game, which had a lot to do with the weather, as the Browns came into last week's game with the lowest run rate in the league at 30%. And then in week 12, that number rose to 47.3%, which was the sixth highest for the week, right? So really a lot of the Browns kind of offensive deployment changed in that one game as they went from, kind of a more pass heavy 11 personnel heavy offense to focusing on the ground game and switching to 12 personnel for 44% of their offensive snaps. That was the second highest rate in week 12 and not something that they've done a lot of this season. And it was just in large part because of the snow. And weather should be clear on Monday in Denver, which is likely to get the Browns back to their usual offensive game plan, I think. The Broncos are currently 5.5-point home favorites, which could also force the Browns into more passing situations this week. Cleveland's running back matchup ranks 23rd, according to our strength of schedule tool. The Browns offensive line has generated just 1.1 rushing yards before contact per attempt. That ranks 21st, and they own a 53.8 run blocking grade. That ranks 29th. They're going against the Denver Broncos, who own a top 10 run defense grade at 71.9, and they've allowed the second fewest rushing yards before contact per attempt at 0.8 this season. So Nick Chubb, was great to see him have that big game, but I don't think it's necessarily repeatable based on this offense and the matchup this week.
Yep, I agree.
All right, let's go to kind of our discussion waiver wire question marks section. We still don't have like an official name for it, the free for all here, Nick, and you've highlighted a couple names here. So who would you like to talk about this week?
Yeah, so I had Will Dissly, of course, before the old groin injury thing here, but here's what he's got going on. So we talked about this earlier. Facing the Atlanta Falcons, zone heavy coverage unit, earning targets at a 32.7% target rate. I mentioned that in McConkey's sum, he's only 3 targets behind Dissly. That's because he's playing more snaps, I suppose. But Will Dissly, the only player in target rate versus zone coverage, better than 18.5%. So I don't mean to downplay McConkey there, because I do think he's volume-wise, he's going to be totally fine, and he's going to kill it in the player versus player matchup. But if Will Dissly's on the field, he's going to eat this Atlanta Falcons defense for lunch. So if he's there, like with Dissly, I think he's a tight end one, and we're at a weird point in the year. If he's active, are you starting him in the flex over Ramondre?
Yeah, no, I would. If he's active, like if it turns out that this injury is just kind of a maintenance thing, if he's back to like full practice, say for example on Thursday, then yeah, I feel good about Dissly. Like I like him as a receiving option in this offense. We've talked about Justin Herbert and the passing offense quite a bit in recent weeks, right? But that it's the nice thing about this matchup too is like Justin Herbert has been killing it when kept clean this season. He is the number 1 graded passer in the league when he is operating from a clean pocket. He's thrown 0 interceptions from a clean pocket as well. He's playing as well as you could. He's going up against basically the NPCs of the Atlanta defensive line. So there is really no pass rushing threat there. And if you look at Will Dissly too, on non-pressure dropbacks, just kind of adding to his target rate, 25.2%. That ranks 9th among all tight ends with at least 85 routes. So yeah, I really like the matchup for Will Dissly. The only thing with it, like, so you got him as top 12, right? You're saying he's a tight end 1 this week. All the tight ends are playing this week, essentially, right? Again, it's another thing of like all 32 teams are playing. So let's say McBride, Kelsey, Bowers, Kittle, Hawkinson, K. Dotton, Taysom Hill, those guys are ahead of him. Is that fair to say? That's
many
7
of
players.
them. I mean, I think it starts becoming a conversation once you get into, God, am I crazy? Like TJ Hawkinson, like what is?
Yeah, that's yeah.
I think he gets into the mix at like tight end 7.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, guys like Goddard, Ingram, Jonnu Smith, like ahead of all those guys, right? Yeah.
I put him so like right now. Kelsey, McBride, Bowers, Taysom, Kittle, Jonnu Smith. That's the top tier. I haven't finalized. Actually, I probably will drop Jonnu a bit because Xavier McKinney is going to make life difficult on him with the downfield stuff. Dissly, I think I'm probably slotting him in as like the tight end 6 right now. Nice. Goddard, it's subject to change depending on Devontae Smith's hamstring. K. Dotton, is he still doing his? I actually don't know how he fared last week. Yeah, with Mike Evans back in the line. I mean, I know Mike Evans didn't have a big game, but K. Dotton went back down to 3 targets. K. Dotton is the most volume of volume plays that's ever volumed. One guy I really like, Tucker Kraft. Yeah. Miami, I don't really understand what they were doing. They let Marcus May go, and he was their primary tight end coverage defender. And now Anthony Walker Jr., who's stepped into that role. He's not very good at covering tight ends, but he's hurt and he's not going to play tomorrow. Yeah. So like Tucker Kraft, I think he's up there in the tight end 1 discussion. Anyway, I know I kind of hijacked that, but
no, that's good.
I think Will Dissly, like he's just in there. God, Kyle Pitts. I think he's just in that mid-tier conversation. He does not have the same type of game-breaking speed and things, but
right.
Herbert is locked on right now, and Dissly, he's basically Zach Ertz.
Right. He kind of is.
He's basically Zach Ertz, but he just gets to play with Justin Herbert, and so that's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't feel any discomfort in starting Will Dissly over Dalton Kincaid.
There you go. Yeah. Kincaid banged up as well, right? So I think that makes sense. And yeah, we like Will Dissly. I think he's been a really solid option here and a big part of that passing game. So nice to see. And yeah, I like that exercise there. And you had one other name that you wanted to discuss this week in our little free for all here. Who else was it?
Yeah, so Breece Hall showed up on the injury report as a DNP on Wednesday. Did not participate due to knee soreness. He had some knee soreness thing in like early August, I want to say. And it may be just like, you tear your ACL, you start developing arthritis. I'm not saying he's got a fully arthritic knee, but it's a thing that begins to happen. And it's a long season, a lot of yards, blah, blah, blah. Seattle's defense for the last couple of weeks, like we mentioned earlier, they were on bye in week 10. They've played really, really well since the bye. Now, a lot of that is that they're blitzing the crud out of the opposing quarterback. So I don't maybe they're able to kind of get the ground game going here, but I think if Braylon Allen is active, and Breece Hall is inactive, volume wise, I think that we just safely project him to touch the ball more than 16 times. But given that no one is on bye, we're now in kind of an interesting situation where I think earlier this year we would have looked at this and said that Braylon Allen is an RB1 if Breece Hall is out. But the zero team. Why do they do that? It's so dumb. Where does he like Braylon Allen versus Bucky? Are you starting Braylon Allen ahead of Bucky Irving? I don't think I am.
Yeah, no, I think it's still Bucky for me. But I think that's kind of in that range, right? Like, around kind of maybe like the Aaron Joneses and Chuba Hubbards of the world, right? Like, I think he kind of fits into that group there. Like, if Brees Hall's out, because Brees Hall, weekly RB1 in the ranks, basically, right? And we've talked about Braylon Allen as a handcuff option on the waiver wire show quite a bit. And one of the prime targets for that, because if Brees Hall goes down, then he should absorb like a really high volume role. Like you said, I think 16 touches is well within his realm of possibilities here in that offense. It's a decent matchup, seventh best running back matchup according to our strength of schedule tool. So yeah, I think probably like a low end RB2, just because again we haven't seen him in that full time role. But and then obviously with every team playing as well, kind of pushes him down just a little bit. But I definitely think he's going to have some starting value if Brees Hall's out. Good stuff. All right, let's wrap it up with our defensive special team streamers of the week. Nick, starting off with the first one, the Seattle Seahawks going against the New York Jets. What do you like about their defense this week?
I touched on it just a second ago. They're just blitzing, one, a lot, and then two, very effectively. And the Jets offense has kind of struggled to deal with the blitz, ranking 20th in EPA per play when blitzed. And Aaron Rodgers has a 23.6% pressure to sack rate right now, which is 30th among 33 NFL quarterbacks with at least 60 pressured dropbacks. I think he doesn't make like a lot of boneheaded mistakes, and he'll force throws, but he won't like just
right.
He'll force them like on his own terms, if that makes sense. So I don't know that this is going to be like interception city, but he is. I mean, I guess this is the first week he's off the injury report like in ever, but I think that they're going to be able to rack up some sacks. I bet that they get at least one interception. And then it's, a foot race to the end zone there. I think that this is one where maybe we're able to see, maybe we get a defensive touchdown out of this one, which is basically the whole reason we even look at streaming defenses in the first place. So I've got him as a high end DST one this week, particularly on the shoulders of Mike McDonald's blitzing scheme. And I think I actually want to put some together on this. They brought back Rayshon Jenkins last week, and I don't think that Rayshon Jenkins is like an all-world talent, but Mike McDonald his whole everything is based on having three safeties on the field and being able to do these crazy different coverage looks. And I think that maybe Devin Witherspoon he's like 60 or 50 pounds lighter than Kyle Hamilton. I didn't know how big Kyle Hamilton was. Shout out to you, Ned. I was talking to him about this, my buddy, the other day. 6'4", 220 something, and Devin Witherspoon's like 5'9", 180 or whatever. But if he can keep pounding it in the run game, in the run defense, I think maybe he could kind of take on that role, and then Rayshon Jenkins doesn't matter. But when he's got his three safeties active, and like these guys were all like, I looked at I don't have this, or maybe I do still have the snap counts up. I had him up earlier this morning. But Mike McDonald just loves having three safeties active and just giving the defense fits with the pre-snap looks. And it's kind of a weird thing because you normally just want a bunch of pass rushers. But all right, anyway, droning on about that. He's got his three safeties. I think he's going to do good stuff with that. Do you want to add anything to that, or should I bring this home?
No, bring it home.
Okay. Dallas Cowboys defense versus the New York Giants. So initially when I wrote this, it was thought that they were going to be facing a forearm injured Tommy DeVito. Instead, they're going to be facing a erratically armed Drew Lock. We talked about his downfield stuff and his turnover worthy play rate earlier in the show. I think that it's going to be a big problem. Dallas Cowboys quietly defense is sort of on the rise here. I think Trevon Diggs maybe is a little bit banged up, but like we said, Jordan Lewis, that dude is going to just blanket Wan'Dale Robinson. The pass rush is on the upswing with Micah Parsons back in the lineup. He's really made an impact since he came back in week 10. Dallas pass defense ties for 8th in NFL sacks, 5th in quarterback pressure rate. Allows 0.54 EPA per play. Anyway, the data is all in here. That having the Micah Parsons, he's killing it, and it's wild what a one-man show, a freak show edge rusher can be. Oh, and Deron Bland, he came back and last week, and he earned a 77.5 PFF coverage grade in his first game back from what I think was a re-injured Liz Frank thing. I mean, props to him. Good for him, dude. Awesome stuff from Dallas DST. I think that vaunted unit will soon be a return to household name status, so to speak.
Yeah. I think I'm with you here. And but yeah, that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you all, as always, for tuning in. Always feel free to like, subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. However you want to help support the show, we greatly appreciate it. Nic, huge thank you to you as well for being flexible with your schedule and getting in here to record before Thanksgiving. But before you go, please do remind everyone what you have going on at pff.com this week.
Tuesday mornings, quarterback defense streamers. Wednesday morning, pass run funnel report. Thursday mornings, wide receiver cornerback matchups to target and avoid. Thank you, John.
Thank you. And yeah, we'll have the wide receiver man zone coverage report out by the time you're listening to this. O-line, D-line matchup article will be out on Friday as usual. IDP rankings are out, IDP fantasy report for my IDP friends. And of course, be sure to check out Nate's start sit article, his rankings, recap articles, all that fun stuff. Good luck to everyone in week 13. Have a happy Thanksgiving. And until next time, peace out.